Response to intervention, a model to assure high levels of learning for all students in Jewish day schools. Welcome to an introduction on implementing RTI, or response to intervention, in Jewish day schools. My name is Beth Krasnopol, and I'm the Director of Professional Development at Gateway's Access to Jewish Education. The Ruderman Family Foundation has generously funded this initiative to bring RTI to Jewish day schools in our efforts to reach all of our students. This video is designed to review the basics of RTI and help you begin to see what this powerful process can do for your students. We know that your school offers students a rich curriculum and educational experience both academically and religiously. Providing an effective literacy program that assures all students will be reading and writing at expected levels can be challenging in any school. Students in Jewish day schools have the wonderful opportunity to benefit from a dual curriculum. However, this creates a challenge for teachers in their attempts to provide a literacy program that assures success for all their students. Implementation of the response to intervention process will help schools meet that challenge so that all students will achieve at high levels. Participants will be able to explain the basic principles of the RTI, or response to intervention, process. Participants will begin to think about how response to intervention can be implemented or improved in their schools. In your classroom, do you ever feel like certain students fall through the cracks? Or maybe you have a student who is not making progress, but you are not sure what is getting in the way. Perhaps you have had teacher meetings to discuss students, but your discussions go round and round in circles and are not helpful or productive. Or maybe you've exhausted your teacher toolbox and you don't feel like you know what to do to move your student forward. What is RTI? RTI is an instructional framework for a process designed to address instructional weaknesses early. When in place, it prevents students from slipping through the cracks, a concern all of us have faced. The process includes a provision of systematic, evidence-based instruction for all learners, a multi-tiered system of supports, MTSS. RTI and MTSS are often used interchangeably. Other times, MTSS is meant to be a broader process, including behavior and social emotional. For our purposes, we will use response to intervention. It also includes instruction and targeted interventions matched to student needs. RTI means moving away from the old model where teachers identified students who were not achieving and then passed the responsibility on to a special educator without considering what would happen next. RTI means a shared ownership for all students in providing instruction and targeting interventions when that instruction is not working. Continuous monitoring of student progress to provide data that informs instruction. And a systematic process of intervention to prevent school failure. Key in this framework is the word systematic. RTI gives schools the scaffolding to make this work happen. Tom Herrick and Chris Weber, in their book, RTI is a Verb, talk about the power of RTI to help schools reach all their students. They talk about the RTI teacher teams and the questions they are asking. I quote from their book. Have students responded to instruction? If it's predictable, it's preventable. And we can predict that some students will require additional time and supplemental targeted supports to learn at high levels. If you walk into any first grade classroom, you know that teachers will be able to predict which students will struggle with basic literacy skills. They make these predictions from assessment data and observation. If we know that students are at risk for failure, We have a strong imperative to figure out how to prevent this from happening. RTI can give schools and teachers the power to avoid having students slip through the crack. A robust RTI process delivered with fidelity can assure that all students achieve. RTI is a process guided by questions that educators continually ask. First, what is it we want all of our students to learn? We must have clear, standards-based goals for all of our students. Teachers need to have complete understanding and ownership of these goals for grade level achievement as well as for daily lesson planning. How will we know each student is learning and able to apply each of these standards-based essential skills, concepts, and knowledge? We must have a comprehensive assessment process to answer these questions on both a broad level screening like DIBELS or AIMSweb, and to monitor the learning of skills through progress monitoring and daily formative assessment. How will we respond when some of our students do not learn? We must have a bank of interventions and teachers trained to deliver those interventions along with a structure that allows time dedicated to this. Teachers need the tools and time to respond to assessment data. How will we enrich and extend the learning for students who are already proficient? Teachers must have strategies and training to extend learning beyond the basic standards for students who have come to each lesson with mastery. Remember, the RTI process assures that all students will achieve. This triangle is typically used to represent the RTI process. It is a model for instructional supports and not a leveled placement for students. For example, we will be talking about interventions or instruction appropriate at each level. The tiers are used to describe the intensity of that instruction. So we might say Joshua receives Tier 2 interventions. We would not refer to him as a Tier 2 student. Tier 1 is the base that includes instruction and need-to-know goals for all students. It is literally the foundation for classroom instruction. In Tier 1, it is expected that 80 to 90% of students should reach goals based on grade level standards with a strong, evidence-based core curriculum. Tier 1 instruction will have the elements of good teaching, including differentiation, explicit instruction, scaffolding, and strategy instruction. In Tier 2, 5 to 10% of students should reach goals based on grade level standards with additional targeted instructional interventions. These interventions are supplemental, meaning they are in addition to Tier 1 instruction. In Tier 3, 1 to 5% of all your students will need intense specialized instruction to reach goals. Pause the video now and take a minute. Write down one element of your core literacy curriculum. Now see if you can write down 3 interventions you might use for students who are not responding to that core instruction. This is the beginning of thinking and planning with an RTI mindset. Here is an example of targeted intervention. Through the use of team meetings that focus on analyzing data and identifying interventions, teachers came up with this plan. At the end of 6 weeks, progress would be monitored and the plan would be revised according to that data. So here we have Joseph, a first grade student who has not mastered the skill of reading CVC words as indicated by informal formative assessment and work in foundations. DIBELS indicated that he was at risk. The following interventions were tried for 6 weeks. A double dose of foundations, 10-minute daily review and practice with sound symbol connection and with tapping out sounds, practice guided by daily formative assessment, and guided reading practice with controlled text. The key is that these interventions are targeted and systematic and monitored. At the end of the 6-week period, the team would come back and revisit the data, deciding whether the interventions were effective, whether they need to be stopped, continued, or perhaps new interventions need to be implemented. So how do you get to those targeted interventions? Here are the components of the RTI process. First, high quality, evidence-based, differentiated core instruction for all students. This is what we talk about in Tier 1. This process can only work if you have a strong core curriculum that is implemented with fidelity in the classroom. That's your foundation, Tier 1. Next, universal screening for all students and ongoing formative assessment and progress monitoring. Screening may start with DIBELS or Ames Web, but the ongoing assessments are equally, if not more important. 3, increasing intensive, data-driven instruction provided in a multi-tiered approach with at least 3 instructional tiers. And 4, teacher meetings that regularly and systematically look at student data to inform instruction and interventions. Providing dedicated meeting time for this process is a critical element that must be supported by school leadership and schedules. How can gateways help? Gateways can guide your school in their implementation of the RTI process. Our model for projects that involve school change includes 4 phases: initiate, assess, plan, and implement. We have found that systematically moving through those phases sets the school up for success in implementing new initiatives. In the initiate phase, we will start by meeting with your head of school and a designated coordinator. Then in the assess phase, using a robust assessment tool, we will guide you in examining where you are currently in regards to RTI. The planning phase will examine what you have assessed and create goals for implementation, quite like the process of good teaching that you would do within the RTI process. And finally, in the implementation phase, we can be available to help with training, coaching, or direct support in making the RTI process work effectively in your school. These are a few of the many resources available on RTI. The first 2 books are highly recommended for gaining a deeper understanding on how to implement RTI. The 2 websites offer many resources in the form of articles, templates, and general information. If you have any questions or would like more information, or if you'd even like to share some of your experience with RTI, we would love to hear from you. Please contact us. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to working with you.